Today's session is dedicated for those of you that are able to read the Quran, but you don't, for the most part, understand what's being read, or you listen to the Quran but you don't know what's being recited, right? So, but the reading part is done for you. You know your alif bas already. You know how to put words together. The qaida nuraniya is clear for you, etc., etc. So you're done with the basics of Arabic. Now you want to move on to understanding the Arabic language, and again we're focused on Quranic Arabic. Okay, so what we're going to start with is a bit of a diagram. That's why I wanted to use the board so you can visualize what Arabic study is made of. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to write is grammar. So I'll only use English words because I don't want to burden you with Arabic terms yet. Okay, grammar, and then the second thing will be morphology. That's a big word, but I'll explain what that means, inshallah. And then finally rhetoric. Okay, let me explain each of these. Grammar is basically the chemistry of a language. How does one word affect another word? So when I say something like, I was driving to school, I don't say me was driving to school or my was driving to school. I say I was driving to school because in that sentence, even though the word I and the word my and the word me are referring to myself, they're talking about me, they mean that you can't use them anywhere you like. You have to use the right version of the word. That's really what grammar is about. Arabic words have versions. What version are you supposed to use at what point? What sounds should it make? What variation of it should you use? It's a pretty cool science to study. And you can imagine it's got like 100 rules, right? Or maybe 200 rules. But don't worry about it. You don't have to know 200 rules. You have to know like 10. And those 10 are like the main branches of a tree. Once you understand those, then everything else is just additional information that comes over time. So it's really that fundamental is grammar. And once you have the basic grammar, then everything more complicated is built on top of that, and it's built very, very easily. So here in grammar, I'm going to say the fundamentals, and I'm just going to write the word fun here. The fundamentals and then the advanced, okay? That's all you really need, is first focus on the fundamentals, and then later on, little by little, you can pick up on the advanced. But if that's only going to happen if your fundamentals are solid. Like I even say for anybody who's going to study Arabic, even if you did the fundamentals 3-4 times, at least twice, go through the fundamentals twice. Don't do it once, do it twice. Best, you do it 3 times. So well that even if you know nothing else about Arabic, you can basically you know it so well, you can teach it to somebody else. If you can do that, then you will propel in your Arabic studies. Like, your progress down the road is going to be so good because the foundation, just like the strong foundation of a building, if you do it right, then Arabic becomes easy to conquer, really. If you look at all of this as one giant mix, this encyclopedia of rules of the Arabic language, then it's just way too intimidating. There's no way you can retain it, no way you can remember that stuff. There's no way you're going to keep it. Okay, so the fundamentals are first and then the advanced. And by the way, what's crazy is in classical books of Arabic, the fundamentals and the advanced are all mixed together. They're not like, okay, we'll start with the basics and work our way to the advanced. They start with every rule pertaining to every bit of language, the fundamental mixed in with the advanced, and you all have to memorize all of that together. That's not a successful approach, especially for those of you that are learning Arabic as a second or even third language. And on top of that, you're only learning it for the Quran's purpose. That approach may work for full-time students in a seminary that already speak Arabic, but it's not going to work for the rest of us. So we have to take an approach that's catered to our modern context. Let me tell you what morphology is. In morphology, Arabic is really cool. You can take a word and you can make 100 words without having to learn the other 100 words. If you just know of the operation of a machine, it actually lets you create those words. If you become good at morphology, you have to learn 100 times less vocabulary. Imagine that. Like, just to give you an idea of what I'm trying to get across. You have, for example, the word teacher, or knowledge, or student, or university, or school, or let's say learning. All of these words that I just shared with you have a common theme. They revolve around knowledge. A teacher is someone who gives knowledge. A learner is someone who acquires knowledge. Knowledge, the word knowledge itself. A school is a place where knowledge is acquired, or university. A scholar, even add the word scholar to that list, someone who has a lot of knowledge. So all of those words in the English dictionary are in different places. Scholar is here, teacher is here, learner is here, and they're by alphabetical, order. So you look under L for learner, you look under S for scholar, etc., right? The Arabic language is so cool. All you have to know is really the word ilm, knowledge, and from it you can make ma'lam and allama and ta'lim and muta'allim and mu'allim, and you can make all of the words teacher, student, university, learning place, scholar, knowledge, information. You can make all of those words yourself without actually having to look them up if you understand how morphology works. So it's actually you're learning to operate a machine, and the purpose of that machine is you put one word in and it spits 100 words out. When somebody learns morphology well, then their ability to acquire Arabic vocabulary becomes exponentially easier. And especially when it comes to the Qur'an, if you understand morphology well, then learning one word means you've learned like 2,000 words in the Qur'an already. Like there's so many other places this word occurs in different variations, and you already understand all of those variations. And again, with morphology, there are fundamentals and there's advanced. And you gotta make a distinction between those two. You have to separate them, because a lot of times they're just taught all as one package. No, if you separate them and you teach the fundamentals, get them right, get students to really understand not only what they've memorized or they're practicing and drilling, but how that applies to the text, and then move on to the advanced, incredible progress. Like, you would be shocked how quickly something like this can be learned. And it's, I've met Arab teachers when I developed this curriculum and I was teaching it, and we'd have teachers come in from different parts of the world, sometimes Moroccan teachers, Saudi teachers, Egyptian teachers, etc. And they're sitting in the classroom 3 months, 4 months into the program with my students. And they're like, MashaAllah, ta'allamu kulla hadha khilal sanatayn, MashaAllah. I was like, only 2 years and they learned so much. And I was like, no, this is 3rd month. This ain't 2 years. And they're like, la athiq, la mustahil. I don't believe this. This is impossible. I was like, no, it's possible. You just got to take a mathematical approach. That's all you have to do. So once the right approach is taken, your ability to grasp the Arabic language will just turn into a set of math problems. And then finally, there's rhetoric, which is kind of like the art of Arabic study, and that's easy to do afterwards. A couple of things, like somebody brought up vocabulary, and that's really what I want to end with today, is study of Arabic vocabulary, because that's a big challenge for so many people, right? How am I going to learn all these words? I can't remember them. I'll add something to the list here, vocab. And there are 3 steps to vocab, and I want you to really focus on 2 of them. The first of them is fundamental vocab. I'll talk about that in a second. The second of them is targeted vocab. And then the third of them is comprehensive vocab. This is how I organize vocabulary, okay? So fundamental, targeted, and comprehensive. What is fundamental? Fundamental means words that are going to come up in the Qur'an on virtually every page. Like if you knew these 30 words, then you're going to at least be able to identify something happening on any page of the Qur'an, any imam reciting any surah, and you're standing in prayer like, oh, got that word, boop, that one too, hey, I learned that word. You'll be able to hear it, okay? Why not start with the most common and the most fundamental piece of language and understand that well? So it's like if you imagine a page of the Qur'an in Arabic, right? If you learn the fundamental vocabulary, I'd say about 25% of that page gets highlighted. It starts popping out at you. 25%. Just from just a few words that you learned. So you're already feeling a sense of accomplishment, because you can't say, I know nothing about this page. I actually kind of know something about 25% of it. That's pretty cool. And that's a really good sense of accomplishment. After fundamental vocabulary comes targeted vocabulary. Whether you're a student of mine or not, whether you are part of the DREAM program or not, whether you're going to learn Arabic on your own or not, if you're doing it for the purpose of understanding the Qur'an, please take this advice. Don't worry about learning the vocabulary of the entire Qur'an. Don't do it. It's a mistake. It's a mistake. All you need to do is focus on one surah. Start with a small surah that you love, that you've or maybe already memorized, or you'd really like to memorize. Start with the Fatiha, for God's sake, and start with it. And just when you've done this, your targeted vocabulary is only the vocabulary of that surah, nothing else. I'm not concerned about Baqarah or Ali Imran or Nisa or Ma'idah or An'am or A'raf. No, I'm only worried about the Fatiha. Even if it takes me 10 years, I don't care. I'm only worried about the vocabulary of the Fatiha. And when you do this, the question is, fine, I'll memorize the vocabulary, but how am I supposed to remember it? I'm going to forget in a week. I'll tell you the secret. One, if you can, memorize the surah. And I start with Fatiha because inshallah you will memorize Fatiha, right? So, or you already have memorized the Fatiha. The second thing is, listen to an explanation of that surah. Over and over. Listen to an explanation by someone of that surah. There's this guy, Nouman Khan, he talks about Quran a lot. You could listen to him, but he's kind of weird. If you find somebody else, whoever, listen. Not read. I didn't say read, because most of you, when you read stuff, you forget. But when you listen to stuff, you remember. I know that worked for me. I listened to a lot of lectures on the Quran, and that helped me remember the vocabulary of those surahs. Why? Because when you learn vocabulary in a list, right, there's a list of words. You know, Alhamdulillahi, Rabbi, Al-Alamin, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Maliki, Yawmiddin, and you've got like long list, like 30, 40 words, and you've got the meanings next to every word, and like you're sitting there memorizing. There's no context, there's no story, there's nothing tying them together. But when someone's explaining the ayat, and they're actually walking you through every word and tying them together, and lessons and wisdom and guidance and counsel is connected to what you just memorized and what you studied, then that vocabulary will stick in your head. And then the icing on the cake is application. This is when your Arabic will become rock solid. Let me tell you what application means. Application means you learn fundamental grammar. Even if you learn a little bit of grammar, how does that grammar apply to the surah you just learned, to the vocabulary you just learned? You learned a little bit of morphology. How does that morphology help you understand the surah that you just memorized? Focus on one bit of the Quran and its quality over quantity. With Quran, don't worry about quantity. Don't say, I need to know 80% of its vocabulary. I need to know 90%. I need to know everything. You don't. Quran is a journey. Enjoy it. Take small steps, but take qualitative steps. If you can do that, I tell you, you think that you're taking a really small step. You only just learned one little surah, but my goodness. 5-6 pages into the Quran later, you'll notice that you've actually conquered hundreds of pages of vocabulary. It's amazing. The Quran is actually repetitive vocabulary, repetitive grammatical patterns, repetitive morphological patterns, morphology. When you start seeing that in action, your progress will become amazing. Your job is not to understand the whole Quran. Your job is to have a relationship with the Quran. Let me repeat that. This is the last thing I'm sharing with you today. Probably the most important thing as a student of the Quran and as a student of the language of the Quran. Your job is not to learn the whole Quran. Your job is to have a connection with the Quran. And to have a connection with the Quran, memorize the surah, listen to an explanation of the surah, and then apply the Arabic that you've learned to that surah, even if it's to a part of that surah. If you can do that, you don't say, I know the whole Quran or I know so much Quran, but I have some deep connection with this portion of the Quran. Then you take the next portion and do the same thing. And you do the next portion and do the same thing. And as you keep going with these portions, even if one portion takes you 6 months, even if one portion takes you a year, it doesn't matter. You spent quality time with Allah's book.